The soft glow of the afternoon sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Core Motion Rehabilitation Center, casting golden streaks across the room where Alyssa Reed carefully adjusted her patient's knee brace. At only 29, she had already become one of the most beloved physical therapists in Manhattan, not just for her expertise, but for the quiet way she listened and the healing power in her touch. "Almost there, Ms. Linda, just a little more." Alyssa's voice was gentle but encouraging. The elderly woman winced slightly but completed the exercise with Alyssa's steady support. "Perfect. You've made amazing progress today." "That's only because you make me feel like I can do anything, sweetheart." The woman smiled, pride twinkling in her tired eyes. Alyssa smiled back, helping her patient to her feet, her heart swelling with a familiar warmth. To Alyssa, this wasn't just a job, it was a purpose. A way to walk beside people as they found their strength again, not just in their bodies, but in their belief in themselves. After her last session, Alyssa gathered her things, her mind already drifting to the future, her own studio. Warm, welcoming, filled with light and movement, a place that didn't feel like a clinic, but a sanctuary. She'd spent the past year writing business plans, researching spaces, saving every dollar she could. The dream felt closer than ever. On the train ride home, she slipped in her earbuds, letting the infectious rhythm of Afrobeat carry her away. A small smile played at her lips. Tonight, she'd be dancing again with Tiana, her best friend and the keeper of dreams Alyssa once thought she'd lost. Just a few blocks from Core Motion, where Alyssa was boarding the train, lost in the rhythm of Afrobeat, Nathaniel Chase stood in a very different kind of silence. Nathaniel Chase was a name everyone in the tech finance world knew. The CEO of Chase Dynamics, a multi-billion-dollar technology empire based in Manhattan, he was the embodiment of success, cold, calculated, and always in control. At 36, he lived alone in a state-of-the-art penthouse on the city's west side. Every morning began with market forecasts, and every evening ended with a glass of whiskey and silence. His schedule was exact to the minute, but his mind was still trapped in a single night, 15 years ago. The night of the accident, Emily, the woman he had loved with everything in him, died in the passenger seat of his car, taken in a crash caused by none other than Olivia. Olivia, the woman his mother had always tried to push back into his life. To Evelyn Chase, a woman of old money and older expectations, Olivia was stability, the kind of woman fit for a Chase heir. But ever since Emily's death, Nathaniel had locked himself inside a quieter world, a world of numbers and photographs. Photography was the only place he allowed emotion to exist. Silent, raw, unpolished. His black and white photos carried a stillness, a sorrow, much like the man behind the lens. No one knew that behind the polished glass walls of his empire was a man who had never truly forgiven the past, and certainly never imagined that he might be the one who needed healing. Nathaniel didn't yet know that fate had other plans, and this time it wore the face of two women who were tired of watching their loved ones hurt. That meeting, seemingly random, was anything but. It had been orchestrated by two women who knew just how broken their loved ones' hearts had once been. Tiana, Alyssa's best friend, and Sophie, Nathaniel's younger sister, first met at an exclusive skincare class. They bonded instantly over a shared mission, rescuing the love lives of two people who refused to try again. "She deserves someone who really sees her," Tiana had said. "And so does my brother," Sophie replied. "He hasn't let anyone in since then." They made a plan. A dinner reservation at Vincentos. Not too flashy, not too serious, just safe enough to lower a guard. Nathaniel had always known how to skillfully dodge every invitation to date, until the call came from Sophie. "I made a dinner reservation. Vincentos, 8 o'clock, no negotiation." Her voice, though soft, held firm conviction. "Why?" he asked absently, eyes still on the quarterly earnings report. "Because you're living like a shadow. And because Sophie hesitated. "She's different. She heals people every day, but she's still learning how to heal herself." Nathaniel didn't respond, but when the call ended, his fingers instinctively touched the scar above his brow. For 15 years, he'd learned how to survive alone. He'd never once asked if that was truly living. That night, as he stood in front of the mirror adjusting his cufflinks for the third time, Nathaniel barely recognized the man staring back at him. For the first time in years, he was stepping out not for expectation, not for formality, but perhaps, just perhaps, because his heart was tired of being silent. Vincentos was tucked into a historic building in the West Village, with exposed brick walls and soft amber lighting that gave it an air of quiet elegance. It was the kind of place with a 2-month wait list. Unless, of course, you were Nathaniel Chase and had a younger sister determined to get you on a blind date. Alyssa arrived first, as she always did, 7:55 sharp. She wore a simple red dress, elegant in its understatement, her natural curls styled in a loose updo with a few strands framing her face. The host led her to a quiet corner table tucked beside a vintage wine rack. The air was still enough that she could hear the rhythm of her heartbeat as she checked the time. At exactly 8 o'clock, Nathaniel walked in. He wore a charcoal suit, navy tie, his sharp eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. For a moment, time seemed to stall. "Hi," Alyssa said, rising slightly, her smile touched with nerves. "I'm Alyssa." "Nathaniel," he shook her hand. His touch was warmer than she expected. It had been a long time since he felt a handshake that actually felt real. They sat down, a brief silence settling over the table, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind that let two people hear each other without words. "My sister has surprisingly good taste in people," Nathaniel said first, the corner of his mouth lifting. "My best friend, too. She practically forced me into this dress," Alyssa replied with a quiet laugh, and just like that, the air around them softened. They talked about work, hobbies, the city. Alyssa spoke of her dream to open her own studio, her eyes lighting up with every word about healing and movement. Nathaniel listened, drawn to the way her hands painted her vision with certainty and hope. When dessert arrived, Alyssa set down her fork and looked up. "I don't usually do things like this." "And I never do," Nathaniel admitted. Strangely, that made it feel safer, like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the start of something perfect, but something real. After that night at Vincentos, Alyssa didn't expect much. She'd been through promising first dates before, ones that quietly faded into silence. But this felt different. Not because Nathaniel said anything profound, but because he didn't try to. The next morning, the first message came at 9:04 a.m. "Park, South End, coffee and silence?" She reread it, no emojis, no exclamation marks, and yet it made her smile. From then on, they started seeing each other, not regularly, not defined. A small coffee shop near her studio where she liked sitting by the window. A secondhand bookstall where Nathaniel discovered she used to read Japanese poetry. One cold evening, they shared spicy soup at a tiny restaurant that didn't even have an English menu. Nathaniel began to shift. He still spoke little, still held himself carefully, but there was a softness in his eyes. He smiled more, never forced. He asked about little things, her favorite songs, why she chose her profession, who taught her to dance like that. Alyssa noticed, beneath the logic and control, there was a quiet gentleness in him. When she talked about her patients, he listened without judgment. When she hesitated to speak about her past, he didn't press. But his gaze said clearly, "You don't have to be strong with me." He began bringing along his film camera, old, heavy, but handled like treasure. She never noticed when he took the photos. She only saw them later, herself, laughing in sunlight or skipping over a sidewalk crack. One day, in her studio, he watched her guiding a young patient through a routine. No dialogue, just music and movement. When she turned around, he was already there, smiling softly, camera in hand. "Don't look at me like that," she murmured. "I'm not looking," he said. "I'm remembering." On a quiet evening, they sat on her apartment balcony, the city glowing far below. They didn't speak. But when she leaned her head on his shoulder, and he let his hand quietly find hers, both of them knew that in a loud, chaotic world, they'd found a place where it felt safe to breathe. That morning, Alyssa had helped a patient take their first steps in weeks. That night, she lit a candle, made tea, and thought, maybe, just maybe, this could last. That evening, after a long class at the studio, Alyssa received a message from Tiana. "You need to see this." The article loaded. CEO Nathaniel Chase attends gala with former fiancée Olivia Wynne. Beneath it, a photo, Olivia smiling, leaning ever so slightly toward Nathaniel. The lighting blurred the distance between them. Alyssa stared. That name, Olivia, had never been mentioned. She felt like she'd stepped into a room where everything had already been arranged. Except her. She sent a single message. I didn't realize I'd walked into a chapter that was still open. They met the next afternoon. In the quiet of her kitchen, Alyssa stood with her back to him, hands cradling a cup of tea gone cold. You should have told me, she said, her voice soft but unwavering. Not because I needed control, but because I deserved to know what was still following you. Nathaniel paused. I wasn't trying to hide it, I just didn't know how to name it. She turned, her gaze steady and cutting through his silence. Who is she, Nathaniel? She's someone who came into my life, right when I was breaking. A slow nod. And now? Now, she's a part of me I've tried to leave behind, but the truth is, I haven't. Alyssa let out a small laugh, quiet but without warmth. I'm not afraid of your past, Nathaniel. I'm afraid you're still living in it. He took a step forward, as if to stop something already slipping away. I don't know how to balance what was with what might be. She looked at him, her voice calm and aching. I'm not someone who came after her, Alyssa said at last. I'm just someone who came too late. And then she left, leaving the door half open, and a man standing still, unsure if what he'd just lost was everything he'd ever wanted. Alyssa used to think she was strong, but that night, alone in the Queeth home, wiping down therapy equipment one by one, the silence cracked her. She didn't cry out loud. Just tired eyes and hands gripping the mop handle as if it were the last steady thing left in the world. Jamal, he was the first man who made her believe she needed to become a smaller version of herself to be loved. He loved her laugh, but not the pain behind it. He liked light stories, but disappeared when darkness arrived. She thought she had moved on, thought she was strong again. But Nathaniel, with his silence, had unintentionally reopened an old wound, the feeling of being outside a story already halfway written. Nathaniel sat alone in his dark room, facing a photo yet to be developed. In it, Alyssa was mid-turn beneath soft afternoon light, her hair tousled by wind, a laugh frozen halfway. He couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed like that, the last time he'd allowed himself to feel anything without filtering it through perfect control. Abigail died in a car accident 15 years ago. He was the one driving. Since that day, Nathaniel had lived by one rule: feel less, control more. Olivia came at the right time. She was beautiful, safe, flawless, but their love wasn't born of connection. It was built on necessity. She was the version of perfection his mother could approve. When she left, he didn't cry, he didn't rage, he simply tightened the walls around his heart. Then Alyssa came, smiling at him like he didn't need fixing to be enough. Chloe, his sister, walked into the room without knocking. She placed a photograph in front of him, Alyssa helping a little girl walk during a therapy session. Alyssa's smile in that photo was unlike anything Nathaniel had ever known. You can't keep someone like her with silence, Chloe said. If you don't show her who you really are, she'll walk away, and this time, you'll feel it. Nathaniel was still, then he stood up. Alyssa was watering plants on her balcony when she heard the knock. She peeked through the blinds. She wasn't surprised. Nathaniel stood there, empty-handed, unguarded. She didn't invite him in, but she didn't close the door. You have every right to be angry, he said. His voice was hoarse, low. I'm not here to explain. I'm here because you deserve to see the parts of me I've never shown anyone. She said nothing. Abigail died in a car crash. I was behind the wheel that night, and ever since, I've lived in safety. I didn't love deeply. I didn't let anyone love me deeply. Olivia, she was part of the version of me I built to be acceptable to my mother. Alyssa turned, her eyes soft but steady. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be real. And honestly, I'm scared, he admitted, because with you, I don't know where to hide my cracks anymore. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke, voice quiet. I was scared too. I loved someone who made me believe that if I was unpredictable, if I was hurt, if I was too much, I was unworthy. I shrank. I disappeared. Until I finally learned I didn't need permission to exist as I am. Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't painful. Nathaniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a photo. Alyssa, caught in the wind, looking forward, as if about to step beyond the frame. I took this the day you said, life doesn't have to be perfect to be valuable. I didn't get it then. Now I do. Alyssa took the photo. Her fingers brushed the edge. Her eyes shimmered. I'm not ready to forgive, she whispered. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Nathaniel replied. I'm here to finally begin, honestly. And so they stood there, bathed in soft dusk light, surrounded by named wounds and uncovered truths. Neither moved forward, but neither stepped away. Because sometimes, the first step to healing is simply being willing to stand still, together. 1 week after the conversation on the balcony, life returned to its usual rhythm. Alyssa focused on her rehabilitation classes, while Nathaniel was once again absorbed in back-to-back meetings at Chase Dynamics. They didn't text, didn't call, but between them there was no longer the weight of silence, only the quiet pause needed to understand what they truly wanted. Alyssa didn't try to fill the space. She let it be, a space that needed to breathe. Each evening she sat by the window, scribbling scattered thoughts into a notebook, and sometimes simply listened to the wind slipping through the cracks in the glass. Nathaniel took a different approach. He brought his camera out onto the streets, not to escape, but to see, really see, faces, movements, light, and the simple details he had once ignored. Every time he pressed the shutter, he asked himself, do I have the courage to live in this moment instead of controlling it? On a quiet Friday evening, Alyssa left her studio late. As she stepped outside, she saw something taped gently to the glass door. A Polaroid photo. It was her, mid-laugh, with the sunset pouring gold across her hair. A handwritten line beneath it read, "Not because you're perfect, but because you're real." She stood there for a long time, then turned and headed toward the park. Nathaniel was waiting on their familiar bench, in a dark coat, fingers laced together. When he saw her, he stood. No words, no smile, just waiting. Alyssa walked toward him. Her heart didn't pound like it once had. It moved slower, steadier, and peacefully. "You still haven't promised anything," she began, voice quiet but sure. "I know," Nathaniel replied, "and I didn't come here to promise." "Then why did you come?" "Because for the first time in my life, I don't want to live a safe life if it doesn't include you." Alyssa let out a soft laugh. No defenses, no hesitation. "I don't want someone to choose me out of fear of losing me. I need someone who chooses me because they're certain." "And I am," Nathaniel said. "Right now more than ever." They didn't hug right away. Didn't kiss in some perfect cinematic scene. But when Alyssa reached out her hand and Nathaniel took it, firm and gentle, they both knew. This time, they weren't choosing each other out of impulse or loneliness, but because they had seen the worst in each other and still chose to stay. News of Nathaniel Chase and Alyssa Lane's relationship began to spread after a photo of them holding hands at a community event surfaced. Financial headlines questioned, is the Chase Dynamics CEO distracted by his private life? While gossip sites screamed, the gentle therapist who melted the heart of tech's coldest titan? Alyssa read each line with surprising calm. Perhaps because she had lived in silence for so long, outside noise no longer had the power to shake her. Nathaniel was different. He didn't like his personal life on display, and hated even more that Alyssa was being dragged into the public's magnifying glass. But this time, he didn't retreat. During a live interview, when asked whether his personal life was compromising his image as a leader, Nathaniel paused for a moment. Then he replied, slowly, steadily, "I believe a leader shouldn't just know how to control, but also how to listen, and how to live truthfully. And if anyone's taught me that, it's the woman sitting in the audience today." The camera cut to Alyssa, seated among the crowd, fingers curled around the necklace her mother had left her. She didn't flinch. She smiled. By late spring, Alyssa opened her very first therapy center, a small, sunlit space filled with greenery and soft jazz. She named it Breathe. Nathaniel didn't fund her. She didn't need him to. But he helped her map out the business plan, streamline operations, and quietly captured every moment as she brought her dream to life. In one photo, Alyssa is helping a child stand, the sunlight pouring through the window behind them, casting their silhouettes like a pair of opening wings. Below that photo, Nathaniel inscribed, "Freedom doesn't come from escaping the past, but from facing it, with someone who'll hold your hand through it." One night, they sat together on the balcony, the city twinkling below like an ocean of stars. Alyssa rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Do you think we'll fall again?" Nathaniel smiled, not looking at her, but out at the sky. "Maybe, but this time, if I fall, I know you'll be there to help me up." She didn't answer. She simply held his hand tighter. There were no forever promises. No guarantees that it would be easy. Just two people with unhealed pasts and an unwritten future, willing to write it together. One moment, one step, one breath at a time.